Go ahead.
Is our test still Thursday?
No. No, it won't be until we finish Beowulf, which, come hell or high water's got to be Thursday. Well, take that back, because no, we covered that. We covered that. We covered that. We covered that. That is in the wrong place. Because we were up to Fit 23. We left off the other day discussing, Beowulf gets up after Grendel's mother trips him and then sits on him. Right? And we get that passage, the wise Lord, the ruler of the heavens, decided it rightly. This is 1553 or so. The last the last line before Fit 23. Let me go back to the Old English line. 1553. On Halligod, Jaweld Wisigor, Wistidristen, Rodra Radden, Hiton Richtisechen, Iderliche, Sidden he eft astod. The word sidden there is key. Or how you interpret it and translate it is key. Because it can mean once he stood up, or it can mean because he stood up. So, is he standing up because God shows him favor, or does God show him favor because he stands up? The chicken and the egg kind of question. Okay? There's no necessarily single correct answer. It's just, it's an interesting ambiguity within the poem. Whichever the case is, Beowulf does stand up. God does show him favor, and we're told. He saw among the armor a victorious blade, ancient giant sword, strong in its edges, worthy in its battles. It was the best of weapons, except that it was greater than any other man might even bear into the play of battle. Good adorned the work of giants. Okay? The Old English work of giants. Turn page. You got to your work. Right? This is using the old French form of the word for giant. It's not using the native Old English enta. Like Tolkien's Ents, Treebeard. Okay? That's where he gets the word from. So it's the old work of giants, we're told. And your gloss tells you old, highly praised weapons are often called the work of giants. Well, yes, but this one has something that these other old works of giants don't have, in terms of weapons at least. This thing's huge. We're told it's so big, no other man can lift it. Okay? And where is it? It is, we're told, hanging on the wall. He saw among the armor a victorious blade. Now that makes it sound like it's just lying on the ground somewhere. The shielding champion seized its linked hilt, fierce and ferocious, drew the ring-marked sword, despairing of his life, that is, what the hell? He sees it, he's going to grab it. He's already tried one sword, right? Hrunting didn't do any good. So he's thinking, well, maybe this one will. Struck in fury so that it caught her hard in the neck, broke her bone rings, chopped her head off. Okay? The blade cut through the doomed flesh. She fell to the floor. The sword was bloody. The soldier, and he's like, yes, The flames gleamed. What does that mean? What flames, first of all? The fire she has in her little cavern. Not about you, but I read this, and every time I read this, you get this impression of, for lack of a better phrase, domesticity on the part of Grendel's mother. She's got a little fire going. She's got a little decorations. I mean, it's just like a redneck heaven, right? rather than having a shotgun on the wall, old work of giants hanging on the wall. Okay? The sword is hanging on the wall. The flames gleam. Why do the flames gleam? And what is meant by gleam? Let's see what the Old English reads. 1570. Lichte Leoma, lighted the flames. Okay. Probably it means they whoosh up. There's a sudden, like somebody threw phosphorus or something on them and they went whoosh. Why? Possibly. Oh man, you're cruel. No. I mean, she's already dead. It would smell really bad though. No, he doesn't push her in. He just leaves her where she is. If you start reading metaphorically and you read other fairy tale type stuff, what often happens when something evil dies or is killed?
It's like a release.
Yeah, it's kind of, so the light kind of blooms up. Okay? A light glowed within, even as from heaven the firmament's candle shines clearly. Again, there's a linking of the sun above, which is called heaven's candle, with this light here. It's kind of like this place is purified of sorts. Okay? He looked around the chamber, passed by the wall, hefted the weapon hard by its hilt, that thane of Helak, angry and resolute, nor was the edge useless to that warrior. But he quickly wished to pay back Grendel for the many battle storms. Okay, he knows Grendel's here, because they followed Grendel's track to the edge of the mere. So he goes and he finds Grendel. I'm skipping a bunch. Line 1584. He paid him back for that, the fierce champion, for on a couch, a barca lounger like that. For on a couch, he saw Grendel lying lifeless. Tothas thehe on resta yesal. He saw Grendel on resta. Okay. Yeah, I guess you could translate that on a couch. You could translate that on his bed. It could be what? His mat of straw. Okay. It's just the place that Grendel lays. He saw Grendel laying. Grendel's dead though. Okay. He saw Grendel lying lifeless, battle-weary from the wound he received in the combat at Heroin. His corpse burst open when he was dealt a blow after death. How did and why did it burst open? It's hra wieder sprung. Sprung. Sprang. What? Why did his body spring?
Rigor mortis?
No. You're on the right track, though. No, not yet. You're driving down the road, little country road. Every now and then you see what on the side of the road? Roadkill. What happens before a lot of people run over that roadkill several times? Like it gets hit by a car, the little armadillo or possum or whatever drags its sorry carcass over and then dies. Side of the road. Put a camera on there. Time-lapse photography. What does the carcass do? Why does it expand? Gas inside. What will it eventually do?
Explode.
Yes, really gross. Okay. Beowulf has found Grendel's carcass, not the size of a possum or armadillo. And it's bloated. And he takes that big you-know-what sword and chops the head off. And it just splatters all over. Lovely imagery. And you got to imagine the Anglo-Saxon warriors hearing this one. Yeah, more blood and gore, Because they'd be used to this if they're real warriors. Okay? Soon the wise troops saw it. What's the it? Nope. You got to go down 2 lines, 3 lines. The sea stained with blood. Okay. Beowulf chops off Grendel's head. And the implication is, it's not literally this, that blood and gore start coursing out, okay? And they do what? It goes up to the top of the pond, the mere, and it's just bubbling up now. Just red, blech, just bubbling. And the men at the top look at that. The wise troops, those who kept watch on the water with Hrothgar. And the gray-bearded elders spoke together about the good one. In other words, they go, Beowulf's toast. Because they see all the stuff coming up.
Shouldn't they have expected that could go either way, though? Like, somebody's going to make it out alive and somebody's not.
Well, possibly. Could be they kill each other. Elders spoke together, said they did not expect that nobleman would return triumphant to seek the mighty prince. To many it seemed that the sea wolf had destroyed him. The 9th hour came. Line 1600 is Tha com non dies. Non dies. It's not a very good one. What's meant by 9th hour? Old Testament / Jewish reckoning of time. 1st hour, 3rd hour, 6th hour, 9th hour, 12th hour. 6th and 9th hours, well, 3rd, 6th, and 9th hours are important biblically or within the Christian tradition. Because what happens at those times? 3rd hour, well, let's just start with 9th hour. What happens on the 9th hour? Christ dies on the cross. It's on the 9th hour he gives up his ghost. Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. And he dies. Okay? Non dies, 9th of the day, however, is Christian reckoning of time in the Middle Ages. Jewish in the Old Testamental period. It's not Germanic. Germanic people did not reckon time this way. They do not use this kind of language. Okay? So that is a dead giveaway that whoever wrote this down for at least the last time is a Christian and is familiar with that terminology. Okay? But what might it indicate, Alan?
Oh, I don't know. I was just
Go ahead.
curious to know if there's a reason they're all divisible left 3.
Kind of. This is 3 p.m., noon, 9 a.m., 6 a.m. It's essentially sunrise to sunset. They then become, in the medieval church, early medieval church and such, they become the hours of prayer. Okay, so that you have matins begins before this, sunrise essentially. And then you get 12th hour, then you get vespers, and then you have Compline after that. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I've got too many there. Should be 7. Sometimes these are combined, sometimes these are combined. It's usually these two that get combined. Okay? So the 7 hours of prayer. Why 7 hours of prayer? Because David says in the Psalms, 7 times, O Lord, have I offered prayer unto you. Okay? And that gets taken by the church. Notice what we're being told is suggested happens at the 9th hour. What do the people at the lake think? Beowulf died. What's our poet doing? He's linking him with Christ. He's not saying Beowulf is Jesus. Okay? He's saying Beowulf is a type of Christ. He's a savior type. Okay? So, 9th hour came, and what happens? The noble Scyldings abandoned the headland. Home went the gold friend of men, that is, Hrothgar. Well, what happens at the 9th hour at the crucifixion? Everybody checks out. Okay? Jesus literally, the others kind of metaphorically. The guests sat sick. Who are the guests? The gloss tells you. The Geats. Hrothgar and his men leave. The remaining Geats, they sit there and they're like, damn, now what do we do? Stared into the mirror. They wished but did not hope that they would see their Lord again. You think that's kind of like John and Mary sitting at the foot of the cross going, okay, he said, destroy this temple and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. Set their watches, countdown timer. Then the sword began. What does that mean, then the sword began? Because notice, Beowulf chops off Grendel's head, and the narrator doesn't say this, but it's kind of implied. Meanwhile, back at the top of the mirror, our radio announcer takes us back, and then we go, meanwhile, back down at the bottom of the lake, what? The sword starts to melt. Not made out of ice, but it melts like ice melts. To dissolve away in battle icicles from the war blood. Something about Grendel's blood melts this sword. Just like ice, when the Father loosens the fetters, the frost fetters, unwraps the water's bonds, he wields power over time and seasons. That is the true maker. In other words, only the one that really controls the times and seasons, only that one is the real creator. The man of the Geats took no more precious treasures from that place, though he saw lots. Okay? What's he take? Grendel's head and the sword hilt. So I imagine he takes the sword hilt, shoves it in a belt, the remaining part of the sword that's attached to the hilt, and he has Grendel's head. And he does what? Walks out to the edge of this cave thing. We're not really sure how this works. Is there some kind of magical force field that keeps the water from flowing in? And he goes, and dies. And we're told, soon he was swimming, who had survived in battle, the downfall of his enemies, dove up through the water. The sea currents were entirely cleansed. Now, were the sea currents cleansed before Beowulf goes up through them? Or as he's swimming through them? And think how somebody cinematically could do this. Have the water just grungy and dark and blah. And Beowulf swims through holding the head, and beneath him, it's all crystal clear. It's an OxyClean commercial for Anglo-Saxon England. That's exactly what it is. And if you buy two. So, they were cleansed, the spacious regions, when that alien spirit gave up life days and this lone world. The implication is, it's Grendel's being there that makes this pond foul. So now that Grendel's no longer there, the pond is now clean. The defender of seafarers came to land, swam stout-hearted. He rejoiced in his sea booty, that is, the reward or the spoils of victory that he brought with him. Okay? And that splendid troop of thanes went towards him. They thanked God, rejoiced in the prince that they might see him safe and sound. So they take off his helmet, take off his mail coat. Under the clouds, the mere stewed, stained with gore. Yeah, but I thought we were just told it had been cleansed. Well, I think it's in the process of cleansing. Okay? So, they go forth. They follow the trail, rejoicing in their hearts. They march along the road, the familiar path, proud as kings. They carried the head from the sea cliff with great trouble, even for 2 pairs of stout-hearted men. So, Beowulf carries the head by himself, but it's difficult for 4 men to carry it. Now, how are these 4 men carrying this head? Think about it for a moment. Carrying a head, okay, you can grab it by the hair. I'm not told Grendel has hair. So, 4 of them had to bear with some strain on a battle pole. Does this mean there's one big thick pole like shoved up through the neck in the underside of the head, and they're all carrying it like this, so Grendel's head is like a shish kebab down here? I don't think so. I think it's each of 4 men have a spear And the spear is stuck up. So you got, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're carrying it like this. So how big is his head?
It's very large.
It's big. It's big enough that you could fit a man in the mouth, or at least big sections of men. It's not like, if I were to turn cannibal and eat somebody, I got to do it one little bite at a time. Grendel does it, head, leg. So they're carrying it like this. Well, if each man is a quote-unquote mighty warrior, they can probably carry, 80, 90, 100 pounds on a sword tip. So 400 pounds possibly for the head. Grendel's big. They make their way to Heorot, and what do? Well, we are told Grendel's head has hair. Because they get to Heorot, and what do? They take it off the poles, and they grab it by the lengths of hair, and walk down the length of Heorot, and drag the head. So, get the image. Heorot's been cleansed after the last time somebody died in it, right? Asherah, that previous morning. So it's all nice and shiny. The floors have been, polished and such. Now Beowulf's men come in carrying Grendel's head, dragging. What's happening to the floor?
There's like gonna be blood and gore.
Blood and gore, brain matter, dribbling out. How do we know? A grisly spectacle for the men and the queen. And I think uses choice of the term grisly with its, somewhat suggestive gristly, like tendons and cartilage. And Beowulf says, "Look, son of Halfdane, prince of the Scyldings, we brought you gladly these gifts from the sea, which you gaze on here, a token of glory. Not easily did I escape with my life that undersea battle, did my brave deed with difficulty. Indeed, the battle would have been over at once if God had not guarded me. I'd have been a dead man, but God willed otherwise." Okay? Every time Beowulf gets in a battle, he says that. Notice what Hrothgar does after Grendel first comes. Sits in ashes and boo-hoo, woe is me. He never once thinks of God. Though when Beowulf comes, he goes, God could have solved this any time he wanted to. And he never then takes the next step and says, why didn't he? Why didn't? There might be danger in that question for Hrothgar. So, Beowulf says, kind of turns to Unferth, I think, and says, sorry, hunting didn't do me any good. But the ruler of men granted to me that I might see on the wall. Now we're told where he gets the sword from. That I might see on the wall a gigantic old sword hanging, glittering. Like, little brass hangers, and it's just decorative. What does this tell us about the Grendel King? They're artistic, they're creative, they're human-ish. Large, cannibalistic human-ish, but since they are descended from Cain. That I might see on the wall a gigantic old sword hanging glittering. He has always guided the friendless one, so I drew that weapon. In that conflict, when I had the chance, I slew the shepherds of that house. Shepherds! Both of them, Grendel and Grendel's mother. Then that battle sword burned up with its ornaments as the blood shot out. So he says, but I've got the hilt for you. Now you have my word that you may in Heorot sleep without care with your company of men, and everything young and old in your nation. Why doesn't he bring Grendel's mother's head too? As proof that she's dead.
Do they not have enough people to carry it?
I mean, the fact that he's there proves that she's dead.
Keep going. Okay, that's possibly it.
And that he got away with the head.
He brought her son's head. This is Beowulf's way of saying, do you really think she would have let me leave with this?
Well, and the help with the sword. I don't know if she would let him leave with that treasure.
Well, yeah, possibly, but, what proof does Hrothgar have of the provenance of the sword? Beowulf's word.
I mean, this is like kind of pushing it. It could also be like kind of showing respect for his mother, like being like, I already killed her son, I killed her, like I don't want to exploit her.
Possibly. But I think it's, who's been the one ravaging? It's Grendel. So, okay, you got the arm, now you got the head. You don't need to worry about her anymore. Okay? So, he gives the hilt to Hrothgar. And we're told, 1677, then the golden hilt was placed in the hand of the gray-haired war chief, the wise old leader, that old work of giants. And this time, if I remember correctly, 1679, it's the old into your work. Yep, into ere your work. The of giants, the old work. Okay. And we're told, it came to the keeping of the Danish lord after the fall of demons, a work of wondersmiths, and when that evil-hearted man, God's adversary, gave up the world guilty of murders, Grendel is who that's referring to, and his mother too, it passed to the possession of the best of world kings between the two seas, of all those that dealt out treasures in Danish lands. The sword hilt passed to the best king between the two seas, Hrothgar. Hrothgar spoke, and then he doesn't speak for like 17 lines. Okay? Hrothgar spoke. It's like the narrator's cue Hrothgar. Meanwhile, what's Hrothgar doing? He's holding this big sword hilt. He studied the hilt of the old heirloom, where was written, that is engraved, carved in runes, the origin of ancient strife. Well, what is the origin of ancient strife? Cain? Is it older than that? Adam and Eve, the fall. Okay. When the flood slew rushing seas, the race of giants. See, some scholars read this and say, the origin of ancient strife is the strife between, possibly, God and the giants. What's Noah's flood? Because who dies in Noah's flood? As well as everybody else. The Nephilim. Who are the Nephilim? The offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. Who are the sons of God?
Angels.
Angelic beings. Is how that's typically understood. What kind of angelic beings? Fallen angelic beings. Okay? And a lot of mythologers, and this goes back to the early years of the Christian church. Church fathers as well as mythologers say, who are the gods of ancient Greece and Rome? Fallen angels who make themselves out to be gods to lead away, the Greeks and Romans and such. Anyways, so Hrothgar sees this ancient strife written on it, and we find out, the flood came, the race of giants, they suffered awfully, the race of giants did. Well, this could also be Norse mythology and frost giants, okay, and their animosity with the gods. Kind of, parallel. That was a people alien to the eternal Lord. A last reward the ruler gave them through the raging waters. Also on the sword guard of bright gold was rightly marked in rune letters, set down and said for whom that sword, best of irons, had first been made. Whenever swords, Germanic swords, are discovered, almost invariably, and there's usually one found every 3 or 4 years. One was found just 2 or 3 years ago. Some hikers were hiking somewhere up in Norway, I think it was. And lo and behold, there, lying literally on the top of the ground, was about a 1,200-year-old Viking sword, just laying there. It's like nobody had ever been there before, and it's just, okay. They usually have a runic inscription on them saying, not made in China, or made in Japan, or made in America, but made for Thor, made for Inger, made for something like that, okay? There's a very famous jewel that survives from Anglo-Saxon England called the Alfred jewel. It's part of what we think was actually a bookmark, okay? That Alfred had made to go along with copies of a book that he had translated and sent to several different monasteries. And this jewel is called the Alfred Jewel. Why? It has an image of a man inside it. It's the only known image of Alfred the Great, okay, made out of glass. And it has inscribed in runes on the outside, Alfred Mach May. Alfred, your work, Mach. Alfred had me made. Okay? Found in the late 19th century. So, whoever this sword belonged to, and notice the poet doesn't tell us. If there's one thing a lot of us would want to know, it's whose name? Whose name was it? You know, but he doesn't say. Then finally, Hrothgar speaks. The wise son of Halfdan. And notice, all fall silent. I mean, the king's speaking. You don't interrupt the king. And he says, one may indeed. No, he doesn't say it like that. Because we're going to find out within this speech how old he is. One may indeed, stay if he acts in truth. And right for the people. Notice, if he acts in truth and right for the people, if he remembers all, the old guardian of his homeland, that this Earl was born a better man. What has Hrothgar just done? Way to go, Beowulf. You were born a better man. Better than me? Better than all men? Beowulf, my friend, your glory is exalted throughout the world over every people. Already? I mean, what happened? Did somebody get on Twitter and... You know. You hold it all. All what? You hold what? Your glory. You hold it all with patient care and temper, strength, with wisdom. Latin, fortitudo et sapientiae. In the 1960s, a scholar named R.E. Caskey wrote an article called Sapientiae et Fortitudo as the controlling theme of Beowulf. Just reverse them. Wisdom and strength as the controlling theme of Beowulf. The end of, because I just taught this yesterday, the end of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, written in 1937, has Thorin Oakenshield, the leader of the dwarves, say to Bilbo on his deathbed that he has a mixture, a blended mixture of wisdom and strength. Or wisdom and courage are his two words. Okay? Now, Tolkien was unfamiliar with this article because it hadn't been written yet. But Tolkien was very familiar with this poem. He knew it inside and out. I damn well would argue he probably could recite it, word for word. Okay? I mean, he'd been studying this thing for years. So look at what Hrothgar says. You hold your glory among all the people with what? With patience, and you temper strength with wisdom. What does it mean to temper something? Slow it down?
Or add it in slowly.
Like when you temper steel, what are you doing to it? Okay, cooling it is in the process of tempering. You heat it up.
Heating it to the other thing so that it doesn't it react badly.
Close.
So it doesn't break.
You heat it up, you cool it down. You heat it up, you cool it down. You heat it. You're making it, as Savannah said, so it won't break. Okay? Tempered steel is the kind of steel you want to use for a sword. Why? Because you smack it against another sword, and guess what? If the other sword isn't tempered, it shatters. Okay? Hunting didn't do any good. Beowulf is going to use his own sword against the dragon later on, and guess what? His sword goes bing and just shatters. Okay? So He tempers strength with wisdom. It's like strength is the steel, water is the wisdom. What's he saying? You don't go off half-cocked. You don't make promises you can't fulfill. I mean, what's the wanderer keep saying? Don't make a boast till you know how your heart will turn. Okay? So, to you I shall fulfill our friendship, as we have said. You shall become a comfort everlasting to your own people and a help to heroes. Not like Heroin. And we get the second reference to Heroin. Heroin is the classic example of what not to be as king. Okay? He's the classic example of the bad king. Not so was Heroin to the sons of Edgewalla, the honor shieldings. He grew not for their delight. He didn't rule for their delight, for their joy. No, but for their destruction and the murder of Danish men. Well, who are the Danish men that are being murdered? His own. He became the destroyer of his own people. Enraged, he cut down his table companions. Later on his deathbed almost, Beowulf is going to say, I never drunkenly slew my hearth companions. Or, I never slew my drunken hearth companions. Where you put the drunken is kind of important. Well, why is that important? Roman writer named Tacitus, in the work he writes called Germania, written around 110 AD, describes Germanic customs. He tells us what Germanic warriors act like. Okay? And he's writing this because he's comparing the Germanic people with the Romans. He's doing that he is Roman. He's entirely Roman. He's doing this for a reason. He's trying to point out Rome's moral failures. And he's doing that by comparing Rome to the barbarians. I mean, if the barbarians don't do what you Romans do, maybe you Romans should clean up your act a little bit. Okay? Well, what does he talk about? He talks about some of the Germanic warriors, what? Drinking a little bit too much from the beer horn, and what do? Oh, yeah? Oh, mine's bigger than yours, buddy. And they fight and they kill each other around the table because they are drunk. Hermod cut down his table companions, comrades in arms, until he turned away alone from the pleasures of men, that famous prince. The mighty God exalted him in the joys of strength and force. Notice, Almighty God did what? Gave him the strength in joys and force. Made him king, is what Hrothgar is saying. He advanced him far over all men, made him king again. Yet in his heart he nursed a blood ravenous breast horde. He doesn't say it, but he might as well say it. He had a dragonish heart. Okay? No rings did he give to the Danes for their honor. He hoarded gold. He hoarded treasure. He didn't distribute. What is a Thane-Lord relationship? I will fight for you. You reward me with treasure. Okay? He endured, joyless, to suffer the pains of that strife, a long-lasting harm to his people. Learn from him. Okay, this is the advice he's giving to Beowulf. This whole thing is often called Hrothgar's homily or Hrothgar's sermon, with the loaded religious connotations of both homily and sermon. Notice, learn from him. Understand virtue. Virtue, right behavior. For your sake, I am telling this in the wisdom of my winters. I am telling this. What's this refer to? The entire speech? What comes before? The this. Or what comes after? For your sake I am telling this in the wisdom of my winters. In other words, I've lived a long time and learned a lot, son. Now listen. And he tells us a story. It is a wonder to say how mighty God, in his great spirit, allots wisdom, land, and lordship to mankind. It is a wonder to say means it's a mystery. How does God choose this person? Okay? He, God, has control of everything. It's like the third or fourth time we've heard the poet say that. Only this time it's not the poet saying it, it's Hrothgar saying it. At times, he, God, permits the thoughts of a man in a mighty race to move in delights. That is, gives him delightful thoughts. The sweet joys gives him to hold in his homeland the sweet joys of earth, the stronghold of men. That is, he becomes powerful, becomes a ruler. Grants him such power over his portion of the world. Think Scyld-Sheving at his beginning reign. Think Hrothgar in the beginning of his reign. Grants him a great kingdom that he himself cannot imagine an end to it in his folly. Okay. When does this happen? Go back. Okay. Sweet joys of earth, stronghold of man, grants him such power over his portion of the world, a great kingdom that he himself cannot imagine an end to it in his folly. I think Hrothgar is implying at the beginning of this guy's kingship. He's thinking what? You can't touch this. Nobody out there can touch me. What else is he? What is meant by that, though? I'm king of all that I survey. All these people love and serve me. Okay, they might not love me, but they do serve me. Okay? You know, quoting his inner Machiavelli there. And what? And I'm young. And I'm healthy. And I'm strong. And tomorrow, I'll still be young, healthy, and strong. And the day after that, I'll still be young, healthy, and strong. And the year after that, and the decade after that. In other words, like every 20, 25, 30-year-old, what does he think? I'm not going to die. Oh, I'm going to die. Everybody's going to die. But when's that going to happen? Way off in the future. Notice, in his folly, he can't imagine an end. What is folly? What's another word for it? We don't use folly very often anymore. Foolishness. Okay? And again, I think this is our Christian poet indicating something. Because according to the Old Testament, what is the definition of a fool? The fool said in his heart, there is no God. Meaning, what? That literally there is no God? Possibly. But what else does it mean? I am God. I am the captain of my own destiny, master of my fate. Nothing else touches me. He dwells in plenty. Notice, has everything he wants. In no way plague him illness or old age. He's strong and healthy. He's young. Nor do evil thoughts darken his spirit. Why not? Because everybody bows down before him. Nor any strife or sword. Why? Well, what did Scyld-Sheving do to the neighboring tribes? He denied them their mead benches. He slaughtered them. Right? He doesn't have any strife. Why not? He's got the biggest weapons. They all fear him. Hate shows itself, but all the world, I love this, turns to his will. Yes, sir, master, what do you want? I'll whatever. Hrothgar comes up with the idea of building Heroin, and what are we told? People from far and wide do what? They bring tribute to help build this hall. The implication is, because if you don't bring tribute, guess what? Hrothgar's just going to take it. And if he's going to take it, what does that happen? What then happens to you? You're dead. He takes it, yes, literally, over your dead body. At last, his portion of pride within him grows and flourishes. His portion. The poet is indicating everybody has an element or portion or dealing of pride. It's not a bad thing. What is bad? When it grows. When it says, I'm so mighty, mighty and powerful, nobody can harm me. While the guardian sleeps, the soul's shepherd. What's the guardian? What's the soul's shepherd? What's that little thing deep in your mind that says, should not do that? The conscience. The conscience. Now the Anglo-Saxons had, from what we understand from the written material that survives, had no understanding of what we mean by conscience. But they did have this understanding, that there was the soul's guardian, the soul's warden, as it's also called. Something designed to protect the soul. What happens to this one? Falls asleep. Why? Because he hasn't exercised it. Why hasn't he exercised the soul's guardian? He's had everything going for him. He's never really been tempted. Okay? And that sleep is too sound, bound with cares. The slayer too close, who sinful and wicked shoots from his bow. Your gloss tells you, the slayer is sin or vice. The soul's guardian is reason, conscience, or prudence. Well, shoots from his bow, it could also be, well, let me go on. Then he is struck in his heart under his helmet with a bitter dart. Under his helmet? That doesn't make any sense. Where do you wear your helmet? On your head. You don't wear it on your heart. Well, the word that's used there for helmet is simply helm. All it means is protector. That's all helm means.
Thanks, y'all.
Okay? So the slayer, whatever it is, strikes with a bitter dart. Well, the word that gets translated bitter, some translators translate as fiery. Can you think of any other text that talks about having a protection over the chest to stop out the fiery darts? Book of Ephesians, where Paul talks about putting on the full armor of God. And you put on the breastplate of righteousness for what purpose? To put out the fiery darts of the evil one. Okay. That's an allusion, I think, okay, to the book of Ephesians. It's not a reference. He doesn't say, see Ephesians 4 or Ephesians 5. He just obliquely alludes to this language. So he doesn't have the protection to put out the fiery dart. He knows no defense. And what happens? The strange, dark demands of evil spirits. What are these strange, dark demands? They are whatever the fiery dart is that gets under the protection. And what are the demands? What does this guy have right now at this point? Everything he could ever want. And then what happens? More. I want more. You know, I don't mean this literally, okay? I'm not picking on him. I'm just using him as an example. Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, owns Amazon, which means what? You know, owns the world. Marketplace, at least. Washington Post. Anybody know what he's going into next? Healthcare. Yeah, dear God. What after that? Is he going to be like Tony Stark and privatize national defense, you know?
I feel like that's more like Elon Musk.
Okay, well, yeah, but he'll send it off in space with mannequins. I like Elon Musk, but man, is he out there. Okay?
He's trying to be out there.
Well, yeah, he's... Whew. He has everything, but it's not enough. He wants more. And what happens? What he has long held seems too little. Angry and greedy, he gives no golden rings for vaunting boasts. Notice, this guy's wealthy beyond his wildest dreams, and he stops giving out gold. I'll go back to Jeff Bezos. You know, a whole bunch of companies, after the passage of the tax cut bill and stuff, they did what? Like up to 5 million Americans now have gotten one-time bonuses and or raises. Some of those bonuses are pretty damn good bonuses. Like 5,000, 7,000. I think it was Chrysler. Everybody that works at Chrysler on the line, $7,000 bonus. Yeah, that'd be nice. Okay. Amazon,
No.
they can afford it. He can afford it, you know. So, he doesn't give out golden rings. His final destiny, he neglects and forgets. What's he mean, his final destiny?
The future.
Death. Two constants in life for the modern American: taxes and death. Okay? Taxes and death. He doesn't think about his final destiny. Since God, ruler of glories, has given him a portion of honors. A portion, a dealing out. The Old English word there is dal. It's the word from which we get the verb, to deal. Like when you deal cards, you are apportioning cards. God has given him some honor. And what has he done? I am now the all-honorable. Bow down and worship me, you know. He hasn't thought about, and yet there will come a day when I will be no more. In the end, it finally comes about. What's the end? His final destiny. That the lone life-dwelling starts to decay and falls. Fated to die. Another follows him, that is, his son, his offspring, and does what? Doles out his riches without regret. Takes that, I don't know, Bill Gates' kid, takes that $42 billion, opens the doors and says, come and get it. Yeah. Bailey's eyes go, really? I'll be there. Give me a plane ticket, you know. Doles out his riches without regret, the Earl's ancient treasure, he heeds no terror. That is, the one who opens the doors, he's not afraid of terror. He's giving away the gold. Now listen to Hrothgar. Defend yourself from wickedness, dear Beowulf, best of men, and choose better, comma, a positive, eternal counsel. Because temporal counsel would say what? Only here? What else?
Only now.
Get as much as you can. Why? Bumper sticker. He who dies with the most toys wins. Go for the gusto. Grab all you can. Look out for number one. Screw number two and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and everybody else. Okay? Look out, Beowulf. Choose eternal counsel. Care not for pride. Great champion. What a downer of a speech, right? I mean, Beowulf has just rid his kingdom of 2 man-eating monsters. And he's going, don't get too full of yourself there, young boy, young man. The glory of your might is but a little while, and damn it, I can tell you from personal experience. Too soon it will be that sickness or the sword will shatter your strength, or the grip of fire, or the surging flood, or the cut of a sword, or the flight of a spear, or terrible old age. Or the light of your eyes will fail and flicker out. In one fell swoop, death, O warrior, will overwhelm you. Okay? He's just killed 2 big monsters. And Hrothgar's saying, don't get cocky, kid. You're going to die too. What's the next line? What's the next word? Thus. What does thus usually mean?
Conclusion or what?
Because, in conclusion, like this, what? 100 half years I held the Ringdanes under the skies and kept them safe from war from many tribes throughout this Middle Earth. Like this man I was just telling you about. I ruled for 50 years. Okay? Kept my people safe from war, from spears and swords, so that I considered none under the expanse of heaven my enemy. Just like the guy I was telling you about. And here's where I break from, I don't know if I'd say a lot of Beowulf scholars, but definitely some. I think Hrothgar was talking about himself. He was the person he was talking about. He was the person who became king, was given an allotment of land and people, built it up, got everybody around to fear him, had no cares whatsoever in the world, ruled for a long time, was strong, was mighty, and his conscience fell asleep. So that I considered none under the expanse of heaven my enemy. Look, turnabout came in my own homeland. Turnabout. What Aristotle calls reversal of fortune. Grief after gladness when Grendel became my invader, the ancient adversary. Now, he calls Grendel the ancient adversary. In Liusa, possibly chooses the word adversary to translate the Old English intentionally of 1776. The Old English is Alduina, the old strife, or the old fighter. Okay? Within the medieval Christian tradition, somebody else is called the old adversary.
Satan.
Yeah, Satan. Satan literally means adversary. Okay? Did Grendel take the place of Satan for him? When Grendel became my invader, the ancient adversary, for that persecution I bore perpetually the greatest heart cares. Notice, Grendel came when? After 50 years. Okay? Thanks be to the Creator, the eternal Lord, that I've lived long enough to see that head stained with blood with my own eyes after all this strife. Now, go to your seat, enjoy the feast, honored in battle. We'll do the treasure bit later. Okay? So what's the import? What's the significance or meaning of this homily? Coming as it does, almost, not quite, it's a little bit past, but almost exactly in the middle of the poem.
It's foreshadowing.
Is it foreshadowing? Does Beowulf become full of pride? Does his conscience fall asleep? And he gets what's coming to him. Because that's how some Christian, that's how some scholars have allegorized the poem. That Beowulf is damned. Okay? And he dies damned. Even though Beowulf pretty much, I think, both the poem and the character indicate, nope, not damned. Okay? What else?
I mean, if it's in the middle of the poem, it's 2 different paths you could take. And you have to choose it from this point on.
And what's he say? Choose
The right path.
eternal counsel. Think of what? Here and now, or what comes later?
Yeah.
Okay? In a sense, this is what all. I'll take that back. Yeah, I'm not going to take that back. This is what life's about. The poet wants us to think. To do what? To prepare for what?
Yeah.
Our exit, as Shakespeare says. Our leaving the scene that we are part of. That's the whole purpose of life. I mean, it's what I argue in my Harry Potter course. The whole purpose, the whole idea behind the novels is one thing. Learn how to die well. How do you learn how to die well? You learn how to live properly. It's the whole purpose behind, there's a Canadian psychologist who's really popular now. He's got a bazillion YouTube views, Jordan Peterson. He's just written a book. It's been on the Amazon bestseller list for like 3 weeks in a row. Egghead book, 12 Rules for Life. What's essentially he's saying? You're gonna die. Suck it up, buttercup, and learn how to live. That's it. Learn how to live doesn't mean go out with the most gusto. Go out with the biggest bang. Go out with the biggest bank account. It means confront adversity and overcome adversity. It means learning how to deal with problems. It means doing what some of the people did in Parkland, Florida last week. Okay? Not just the football coach. Talking about the high school, murder. Not just the football coach. But some of the kids, if you've not seen it on the internet. 15-year-old boy, junior ROTC. Okay? Who stood and held the door open so others could rush inside and got shot several times. Other kids who got kids in the ROTC room and covered them up with Kevlar blankets and were shot. One of the guys lived, got shot 9 times. A 17 or 18-year-old. Okay? They knew what? They knew how to live, and they knew how to die, those who died. Okay? But they knew how to live. How? One of my favorite characters in a series of novels, The Chronicles of Prydain, Taran the Wanderer. Taran says, what's the essence of heroism? Beowulf does this, by the way. It's learning to think a little bit more of others than of yourself. That's it. Okay? This is what Hrothgar is getting at. What did Hrothgar do? He stopped thinking of the people. He thought what? Myself. He stopped distributing treasure, and then what happened? Grendel came. Okay. Why? Well, what's Grendel? The thief of treasure, killer of men. Grendel, you could say, and I'm not actually saying that, I'm just saying you could say this. Grendel is nothing but the physical manifestation of the kind of person Hrothgar had become. Okay? Grendel is the physical manifestation of the kind of person Heroin became. He became the killer of his men. Which men? The men who sat at his hearth table. Well, what does Grendel do? He comes and kills the men at the hearth table. Okay? So, Beowulf noticed, 1785, glad-hearted, went at once to take his seat. And then again, big old feast. Dark of night comes and overshadows the troop, but notice, nobody's afraid now. Why? There aren't any more Grendelkin out in the shadows to come. The soldiers arose. Hrothgar goes off to bed. Beowulf slept well. Okay. Line 1800. The guest slept within until the black raven, blithe-hearted, announced the joy of heaven. Then light came hurrying, and the next morning, Beowulf says what to Hrothgar? Time to go. How long's he been there? 3 days? He gets there the one day. They have the feast. He spends the night. He kills Grendel. The next morning, they celebrate Grendel's death. He spends the night outside the hall. Grendel's mother comes, so this is the second night, kills Asherah. The next day, They follow Grendel's mother to the mere. Takes them the better part of a day to go down to the bottom of the mere. Third day. And notice, third day also, the 9th hour comes, and they all think he's dead. And what happens? He comes back up through the water, baptismal image, and he comes and he brings Grendel's dead body. Well, head at least. So he's had 3 days, time to leave. Time to go off now. So he says, fit 26, now we want to leave. We want to go back to Helak. So, 1822. If, by the way, ever on earth I can do anything to earn more of your affection than the battle deeds I've done already, ruler of men, I'll be ready once. Just, send me a text and I'll be here. If ever I hear, you could really have a lot of fun with this poem if you updated it. Okay? If ever I hear over the sea's expanse that your neighbors threaten you with terror as your enemies used to do, what? I'll come at the head of 1,000 things. They already now know what one geat can do. Okay, it's Beowulf, but... what did he say in his post? All you victory shieldings, all you spear danes, couldn't fight Grendel. Now let me show you what one geat can do. The implication is, now I'll lead 1,000 more like me. You won't have any problems. I have faith in Helak, the Lord of the Geats. Though he be young, shepherd of his people, he'll support me. Though he be young. That, to me, implies Beowulf is older than his uncle. I don't know that he is. But it implies that he could be. Could be. Grendel had Heroin, Hathkin, daughter marries Beowulf, daughter marries Echdale, Beowulf is born, then Helak's born. Could be. Not saying it is. Okay? I've 20 years of teaching this thing. I've never said that before. It just came to me. Could be entirely wrong. So, though he be young, he'll support me with words and deeds that I might honor you well. And then he goes one step further. Because keep in mind, where is he? He's in the hall. Here's Hrothgar, Hrethric, Hrothmund. Where was he sitting before he fought Grendel's mother? Big B, right between them. And when he tells Beowulf to take his seat, I think he means again, take your seat here. Okay? So now he's addressing the king, and he says, and if, by the way, 1836, if ever Hrethric, son of a prince, decides to come to the Gatish court, he will find many friends there, far off lands, or better sought by one who is himself good. If he ever comes overseas to the Geats, he'll find friends. No, why might he come overseas to the Geats? Just traveling? Is this his year off after graduation? He's going to do the grand tour? Possibly. If you take the whole language of adoption seriously. In which case it wouldn't be uncle, it'd just be big brother. Big brother.
I was just thinking.
If he has to flee because someone's trying to take the throne.
I think that's implied. Okay? If he ever needs to come overseas to look for help, he'll find it. And who's sitting next to him? Rolf. I think that's a not so subtle way of saying, Rolf, back down. Down, boy. Or you have me to deal with. You won't have 10 and 12-year-olds. Hrothgar. God gave you those words. The wise Lord has sent those words into your heart. I've never heard a shrewder speech from such a young man. Shrewder speech? Sapientiae. Wisdom. Man, you're not only ripped with muscles and kick you know what, but you're smart to boot. What a catch, this lady's single. Because he dies single. You are strong in might, sound in mind, prudent in speech. I expect it is likely, if it should ever happen, and so he kind of offers a prediction. maybe Heolak will die in war, and if he does, or sickness or whatever, and you're still alive, they're going to offer you the kingship. Your character pleases me, 1853. Better and better, beloved Beowulf. You have brought it about. First time we are even given the hint of this. You have brought it about that between our peoples, the Geatish nation and the Spear Danes, there shall be peace and strife shall rest. Okay, so why mention now that there shall be peace? Shall be implies,
That there was strife.
okay, and future. Like when you guys came knocking on our door, metaphorically, when you landed your ship and 15 men came out armed to the teeth, and the Coast Guard goes, whoa! The Coast Guard's thinking, invasion. Amelia?
Doesn't Hrothgar like say that Beowulf owes him something? So that could be part of it?
He said that earlier.
Right. So
He said that earlier. Yeah, could be. But Edgedale wasn't of the Geatish nation. Edgedale was a waiter. Okay? So he said, there shall be peace and strife shall rest. The malicious deeds they endured before. We were at war. Okay, it might have been a cold war when Beowulf first arrives. In other words, they might not have been physically fighting for a few years, but they were in open hostility. As long as I shall rule this wide realm and treasures together. Many shall greet another with gifts across the gannet's path. In other words, Beowulf, you've opened commerce between us. Not just exchanging goods commerce, but people will travel back and forth now. Because bear in mind, where is the land of the Scyldings? It's that little island between what becomes modern Denmark, this peninsula, and this peninsula, okay, of Sweden. Land right between. He says, so now we'll go back and forth. I know those nations will be made fast against friend and foe, blameless in everything in the old way. In other words, we will ally ourselves. Together we'll rule the galaxy. The protector of heroes, kinsman of Halfdan, gave him 12 great treasures, and I'm not going to go over the treasures that he gives him, but he gives him a bunch of treasures. So, Beowulf and his men march off back to their ship. They meet the Coast Guard. We get some speeches. What does Beowulf give to the Coast Guard? Just for standing there watching his boat for 3 days.
A sword.
1900. To the ship's guardian he gave a sword bound with gold, so that on the mead benches he was afterwards more honored by that heirloom. So he goes back to the line and goes, look at this guy, look what Beowulf gave me. And they're like, whoa. He likes me, you know. So they get on their ship, they row back, and they get back to Heolak's kingdom. And we find out, 1925 and following, Beowulf's aunt, Hygd, was very young, wise, well-mannered, though few winters had the daughter of Hrothgar passed within the palace walls. That is, she's not been there long. She might be someone from another race who was brought in to make peace between two nations. Okay? And then we get a big thing about Thrith's pride, and nobody's really sure what this line's from about 1931 to 1963 mean. Whether it's a person named Thrith or Modthrith, or so we're just going to skip all that. So Beowulf goes with this troop, Fit 28, across the shore, makes his way to Heolak. And we're told, 1966, they had survived their journey, went boldly to where they knew the protector of Earl, slayer of Onyenthal, good young battle king, gave out rings in his fortress. Onyenthal, it's the first time we've heard of this guy. Who is he? Louder? No, Onyenthal. Onyenthal. Sounds like onion, so you could say servant of the onion. I have No idea.
Swedish king, according to this book.
He's the Swedish king. Okay? He has 2 sons. Notice, he doesn't have 4 children, like the others do. Othra and Onola. Othra has 2 sons. Eanmund and Eadgils. Okay? Why is this going to be important? Because Onola, the younger of Onyathau's 2 sons, okay, apparently kills his older brother. Or, at the very least, his older brother becomes unliving. And he takes the kingship from older brother's eldest son. Okay? So we get this long digression. Or we get this little digression, I guess, about Onyathau. So, Beowulf's return is told to Helak, and we're told Hygd comes in, passes around the mead cup, and Helak asks, 1987, how did you fare, beloved Beowulf, in your journey when you suddenly resolved? Suddenly resolved kind of implies what? Louder? Epiphany? What's a negative way of putting that? Rashly, impetuously. To do what? To seek a far-off strife over the salt sea. To seek a far-off strife. Hello, pot says to the kettle. He's the one who seeks a far-off strife later. Against whom? The Frisians. He will open a feud. Okay? Did you better at all the well-known woe of Hrothgar? For that I seethed with heart care and distress, mistrusted the adventure of my beloved man. Long I implored that you not seek that slaughter spirit at all. Whoa, time out. Because when Beowulf arrived at Hrothgar's place, what did he say about the advisors of Helak?
Everyone told him it was a good idea.
Everybody advised me to do this. Everybody except the king? Kind of think if the king didn't want him to do it, maybe some of the others probably didn't as well. I implored you not seek that slaughter spirit at all. Let the South Danes themselves make war against Grendel. In other words, let them take care of their own problems. I mean, do we have to be the world's police, Beowulf, really? I say thanks to God that I might see you again safe and sound. And he kind of says, like, phew, there's a lot of doubt there. We weren't sure whether you were going to make it. Beowulf. He says, it's no mystery. Why not? The fame of my deeds has preceded me. It's kind of what he's saying. Word has spread. 2005, I avenged them all the deaths that Grendel's done. He says, I came there, I greeted Hrothgar. He knew of my intentions. He gave me a seat with his own sons. Everybody was happy. He talks about Wealhtheow. At times would come, she'd pass the drink back and forth. And then Beowulf adds more to the story. We hear about Hrothgar's daughter, Freywaru, line 2022. Back up 2020. At times, before the hall of Thanes, the daughter of Hrothgar bore the ale cup. Freywaru, I heard the men in the hall call her. And then he tells us a story. She is promised to the gracious son of Froda, that is, ENGL. Froda and ENGL are Heathobards. Heathobards, Danes / Scyldings, are in open hostility. She's promised to ENGL for what purpose? Cool the hostility. So he says, but, I know we've got about a minute and a half. Here's what I think is going to happen. She's going to marry ENGL. She's going to go live with the Heathobards. She's going to bring with her a troop of retainers. One of these retainers is going to be some young stud, and he's going to be dressed in the armor and sword of an old dead Heathobard. That is, this young guy's father will have fought against the Heathobards and killed this guy, taken his armor as a booty of war. He dies, gives it to his son. His son now is a retainer to Freywaru. She lives among the Heathobards. And there's going to be some old Heathobardish warrior sitting at the table, sitting next to a young Heathobardish warrior, the son of the dead Heathobard. And the old guy's going to say, look at that. That little poppycock waltzing around in your daddy's arm. I remember when your daddy wore that. That's your daddy's sword, son. And he's going to do it again and again and again. Until finally what happens?
Snaps.
The young son snaps, kills the Danish warrior, takes the sword and armor, runs off. ENGL says, sorry, don't know where he is. And open hostility will break out again. What story have we just heard? It's essentially the Finnsburg episode. You don't solve feuds by marrying your daughter off to end the feud. What's going to happen? Your daughter's going to end up a widow. And her son, if she has one, is probably going to be dead. That's the good possibility. The ungood possibility is she's going to end up being a slave, okay, to the other people. Okay, we'll stop there and pick up, I think it is around Fit 29. And we will finish. So expect a quiz to the end of the poem.